Welcome to the 2020 Winmau product launch. I'm really excited today to be here with Paul Nicholson. Paul's going to run through every single product we've got for 2020. And the reason for this is that so often we show what we've got, we say what we've got, but we really want you to understand and feel what we've made from a professional point of view. And Paul, you're going to run us through that.
Yeah, what we're going to do is look at why things have been done the way they have. Personally, it's all about giving you what you want at the end of the day. We want to make things look cool, we want them to work, and we want to give you choice as well. And we're going to go into why they've been made the way they have. And I'm really excited about everything.
Yeah, and we've got some brilliant special editions for some players, some great new models, extensions to existing models, and you'll take us through all of them.
I will indeed.
We're looking at our first dart in the range for the launch, Sicario, available in 25 gram, 23 gram and 20 gram soft tip. Paul, we've had you thrown these extensively, so you've got no excuse now for a wonderful description. So let's start with, how do you think they look?
Visibly, I mean, all you've got to do is look at this thing and just glare at it for hours. It really is a beautiful looking thing. I like the symmetrical side to it. I think the band in the middle with the colour on either side, it's really visually appealing. And I think that's going to appeal to a lot of players out there who are looking for something quite pretty. But at the same time, it's got a grip pattern on it where you could potentially use it at the bottom, the top, or both. Now, this grip pattern is what really impresses me about this. You get a connection between your fingers and the grip on this dart more than anything I've really felt before.
Is that from having all the mini scallops along the dart?
Yeah, because if you look at it from a distance, you think it's just a normal vertical and horizontal cutting on the barrel all the way around. But when you go a little bit closer, you can see that every silver square on this barrel here, there is a micro U shape there, like a scallop, which we call in darts. And when you put your finger on that, it gives you that little bit of aggression in the grip. It gives you some really good feel, but it's not too aggressive. And I think that's what's important at the moment, because if the grip is too aggressive, it's going to come out of your hand too late. I think the balance of this dart from a grip pattern perspective is spot on.
Yeah, because when you were throwing them, that's what you kept saying, the word you felt very well connected to the dart, and you felt you could get the trajectory right.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think when you've got a barrel that's really smooth or too aggressive, you can have too much of a connection or no connection at all. With this, it gets the balance right. It's not just on the barrel, but it's the seamless point design as well, which allows you to feel like the point and the barrel are working together with your hand. And I just think it's a really clever design.
And it's in torpedo shape. We know you throw a parallel dart. And how you mentioned that torpedo shape almost made you feel like you were flighting it on a higher arc?
If you're a dart player looking for a slightly different angle of entry or an angle of flight, then you're looking at maybe a torpedo-style barrel as opposed to a parallel barrel, then this could be the one for you. Because if you throw from the back of the barrel, which a lot of people do, what you're going to be doing is using the grip here at the back of the barrel, but also throwing into the big weighted portion, which is in the middle here. So you're throwing against the meat of it. So me throwing it, yes, you mentioned I'm a parallel barrel kind of guy, but I adjusted to these really quickly. And it's really made me think as to whether there's something out there for me to use in this shape.
Well, it was interesting because when we spoke about the soft tip, your steel tip is 20 gram, the soft tip is 20 gram. And you said that for a soft tip flight, you want it to come in flatter. And your adjustment to that was rapid.
Yeah, the soft tip version, I have got two different grips, one for steel tip and one for soft tip. And putting the soft grip on that barrel there, it just felt really, really easy. And it was going in really nice and horizontal, because in soft tip boards, you want it to basically land like that. If it goes in too steep, the board's going to reject it. So you want to have that nice, seamless 90-degree angle in there. With that barrel, I had no problem whatsoever adjusting to it. And from the steel tip perspective, just throwing normally like I would, having the middle finger on there, it was going in really straight as well.
So for you, you would look to the 25 gram, even though you play 20 gram, because the length, the barrel is actually slightly longer?
Yeah, the tungsten that is used to make these darts, it starts with something called a billet. And if you throw a dart that's 22, 23 grams, and you use a parallel barrel, and you're maybe looking to transition to the torpedo style, I would say maybe go to the heavier dart, which may seem a little controversial, but at the same time, you want that barrel, that extra length on the barrel, don't you? To have that easier transition. You may want to go to the 23 eventually, but I think with the slightly longer billet or the longer barrel in this one, it might be an easier transition for you.
So did you feel the 25 was easier to throw than the 23?
I did, and it was just because I was getting that extra bit of dip at the end. When you've got more weight at the front end of a dart setup, what you tend to find is that the extra weight comes in at the end and the dart dips more at the end. I just found that a bit more comfortable. We're talking small margins, but that was the one for me in this range.
So it's a thumbs up from Sicario for you?
It is for me.
Majestic, the second darts in the launch. Majestic by name, are they majestic by nature, Paul?
I really like these, and again, for someone who likes a parallel barrel, looking at something that's a bit chunkier and a little bit shorter, I tend to like the heavier one. So we go up to the 26 like this one. It feels a bit more natural because with a shorter barrel like this, you need to have quite a compact grip. I do have two different grips, one for soft tip and one for steel tip. So if I use my soft tip style grip on this, which is a lot more compact, it feels more natural. I can see this fitting into a smaller hand or a more compact grip really easily. Visually, it looks great. It looks like it's got these little speed slots on it. Almost
the milling.
Yeah,
they look great, don't they? Yeah.
It looks fantastic. But the grip in the middle here, which is in black, it's got that reverse sort of technology.
Yes, the ripsaw grip.
Ripsaw grip, yeah. So when you've got it in there, automatically you're thinking, is that going to be a bit too aggressive? But to be honest with you, it's so clever because it's not too deep. It actually feels really grippy, but not too grippy. So it's not going to be wearing your fingertips away or anything like that. It's going to feel really, really secure. But for me, I just think it's a fabulous dart, and it ballistically, when it goes through the air, it's really, really solid. There's no real wavering in the air, left or right. It goes really straight. And when I was throwing them for about 5 or 10 minutes, they were constantly going straight.
Yeah, one of the words when you were throwing them, I could see that you were actually engaging with them more. You said they're really fun to throw.
They really are. I think when you use something a little different, and Peter Wright has talked about this many, many times, that when he needs to inject a little bit of fun into his practice, he tends to use something different and find out what's going on with his throw. And that's exactly what was happening to me when I was throwing this dart. I thought, well, what have I got to change about my grip to make it work even better? I'm trying to find out how to nestle the darts close together. But for this, I was just throwing it, and it was bringing a smile to my face. I thought, this dart flies really nice. Could this be one for me if I stuck with it? But just throwing it was a lot of fun. And
it's across 3 weights. So we have 22, 24 and 26. And we also have 18 and 20 gram in the soft tip. So you can pick in whichever suits your current weight platform. So if you look at the 22, you kept going back to maybe suiting the smaller hand, the more compact grip?
Yeah, I'd say that based on the size of your hand or the size of your grip towards the back and the front of the barrel, I think you have to look at which one would suit you. It's not so much about the weight with this dart. I think it's about the size of the barrel. For someone who was just starting out, even as a kid, I think the 22 gram here, which is a little bit smaller, would be perfect to start on. When I was younger, I started with a very small barrel and worked my way up as my hands got bigger. So you've got a lot of people out there who only use a thumb and a finger for their grip. This might be perfect because you're not using too much barrel, and that's all you want to use.
So more driven by a rear-weighted, rear grip sort of throw?
I think there's 2 ways you can use this. I think you can go right to the front and use a proportion of this grip, which is in black here, or you can use it at the back and use the middle finger for the grip and then use the back towards the stem here. With the prism stem, as you can see, it's got some extra grip there in case the finger slips, which is good for forgiveness. But ultimately, there's a lot of different ways you can use this, but for me, it's for someone with smaller hands, maybe somebody younger, or maybe for the ladies out there with the smaller grips.
And going into the dartboard, the trajectory, did you find they'd sit up nicely, or would prefer to get them flatter?
I tried a couple of different grips with this one, and I found a really consistent flight with 2 different grips. I think it was going in quite flat with the tiniest bit of an upper angle. So I think that says to me that this dart is for someone who wants to group them really close together like Andy Fordham used to. He'd have a very similar type of barrel, and he'd have the same sort of flight as well. So you'd want to get them to float in as opposed to throwing them really hard. The extra weight on this bulbous barrel for me is going to carry it forward with a nice smooth throw. If you throw it really hard, it might not be for you, but if you want to throw it nice and smooth, this might work.
So onto the Overdrive, stunning red metallic finish, Formula One-esque. You commented that the whole combination, you really like it.
I really do. I think there are a lot of options with this barrel, as well as the accessories that come with it. I think there's a little incline on the top of the barrel between the stem and the top of there, which allows someone who holds it towards the back and even onto the stem, get this little chamfer, as we call it, on there, so that if you do hold it there, you've got a bit of something to hold against, especially if you use this Prism 4 stem, which has got the extra grooves for forgiveness. But if you hold it towards the front of the barrel as well, I really do think that's where this dart comes into its own.
Because you have moved your grip across the front, the middle, and the rear. You actually said that in all places it felt quite soft to come out of your hand?
Yeah, it came out of my hand and it glided out, as opposed to shooting out, or in some cases when the dart climbs to the ceiling before it goes into the board. I think this came out really smoothly, and I think that's testament to how it's weighted.
Okay, so where would you, for your ideal, for your grip, how did you approach the dart?
With me, it was just modifying the grip as to where on the barrel it would be. So I went a little bit more towards the front. As you can see with the red rings on it, there's a couple at the top there, but predominantly it's all consistent from about 1/4 in from the top all the way to the bottom, where there's a little bit on the rounded nose.
So you like to feel all the same grip in your hand?
I do, but there are players out there who would like a little bit of difference. It all depends where you place your finger and your thumb on this particular barrel, but the glorifying thing about it is that no matter where you position it, there is some grip for you.
And we spoke about the softness of that, and you said the rings aren't overly aggressive.
Yeah, what I found with the grip on this is that it's consistent, but the gap of the grip, or the space that's been done here, it's a little bit wider, and it doesn't feel overly aggressive, which when you look at it, you think that's going to be an aggressive dart, but it doesn't feel that way. That's why I was not so much surprised, but really glad to see that it was coming out of my hand with a bit of glide. And again, it was because when it's too aggressive, you tend to pull it left and you pull it low because it's in your hand too long. But it's not too aggressive, it looks great, and that's set up. What's not to like?
Well, you've got, and as well, you've got 22, 23, 24, and 25 grams to choose from. Yep. I think your favourite 22?
I like 22s. I tend to stick on the lighter side of things. I've never really been a fan of the heavier dart, unless it's with something shorter and wider, which we've talked about in some of the other segments with other kit. With the soft tip dart, though, it's quite a long barrel, this one. If you're used to a shorter barrel, this will be a drastic change. However, if you like to play soft tip darts and steel tip darts and you want this consistency of barrel, this will deliver that.
Yeah, you were quite surprised by that, weren't you? The length that the soft tip gets is equally as long as the steel tip.
Yeah, very much so, because you find, particularly with a lot of pro players' darts, that their soft tip versions have shorter barrels, so they have to modify their grips accordingly. But with this one, the length of the barrel is very consistent towards what the steel tip one is like as well. So that's what really stuck out for me when it came to looking at the two different styles.
And that allowed you to get the soft tip in flat how you like to?
Absolutely right, because when you want the darts to land the way you want them to land, you shouldn't really be changing grip and changing style. If you're flipping between two different league nights, for instance, and you're playing soft tip one night and steel tip next night, you want to have the same grip and the same throw if possible. And this range is definitely going to deliver that if you play both styles. So
can we see a Newcastle fan going from black and white to red and white?
Maybe from a darts perspective. I don't mind using a bit of red, but definitely not in football terms.
So the Sabotage range now in onyx coating with the ripsaw grip, the length of the barrel. When we were throwing them just then, I think we both agreed, an aggressive level grip, Paul?
It is. I think if you're looking for a consistent grip from top to bottom, this could suit you. And one of the things that people will say when they look at something like this is, maybe that's too aggressive for me. Well, when I first picked up this dart, that was my initial thought. But the thing about this is that the ripsaw grip is not dug into the tungsten that deep. It just looks aggressive.
So more surface, slightly shallower on the surface finish.
Absolutely right. I've tried this grip before when it was deeper, and it was way too aggressive for me.
So would that sort of get stuck in your hand when you were releasing?
Correct. When you've got a grip that is way too aggressive, it comes out of your hand too late, and then you try and rescue the shot with your shoulder.
So that's when you get the pull darts?
Correct.
Okay, good.
So you'll pull them low and you'll pull them right if you're a right-hander, and it'll be left if you're a left-hander. So with this one, the thing that's clever about it, it's not just got this stealth look about it with the onyx coating, which I really like in the gunmetal, by the way, but the grip is just not too deep. You try and put your fingernail into that grip and it just barely goes in there. It's really, really clever.
So it looks more aggressive than it actually really is?
Yeah, it's a strange aesthetic, really, but it's one that I really am interested in, because if you are looking for a grippy dart, then don't be afraid to look at this particular range, because this more shallow type ripsaw that I see in this, it could be very useful for someone who needs grip constantly from the top to the bottom, with that little bit of taper as well at the end.
And throw dynamics, when you've got 22, 24 and 26 gram, similar throw dynamics or different across the weights?
I think it depends on how fast you throw the dart, whether you want to flight them through the air and get a little bit of deviation, or whether you get them to flow really, really, really fast.
Because when you have the soft tip again, you get them nice and flat because you change your throw. So do you prefer these to sit them up, or do you like them to get them flatter?
My natural way of getting these in the board is to get them upright. That's just the way that I would get a pencil style barrel, or the parallel type barrel. But I can definitely see a lot of players getting these in quite flat.
Well, we looked at one little set, you had 6 from 9 perfect darts in treble 20, at the point where you started to engage with them more. And how was your throw in those 3 throws?
It was more deliberate. I think when you have a new set of darts in your hands, you've got to slow things down. I think if you go into a new set, particularly like this, where it feels a little different, you've got to throw every dart with real consciousness. It's not just doing it naturally like you would do with the set that you already have. I think you've got to understand how the dart behaves coming out of your hand and how it behaves through the air. When I was throwing those 9 darts that were pretty perfect, I was making sure that every dart had full attention and the follow-through was all the way through, very much like Mervyn King does with every dart. I think you can sometimes get lost in how the dart feels and not look at how it behaves. With these darts, once you've got the feel of it in your hands and it feels great, just look at how it behaves when it comes out of the hand and then adjust accordingly.
So it's kind of changed your mind a little bit towards a bit more of an aggressive grip?
It has. I've used aggressive grips in the past, but not to this consistency from top to bottom. So the good thing about that is that if your fingers or your inside of your fingers do slip a little bit, you're going to have the same feel from top to bottom and you're not going to get any deviation.
And the tapered nose you quite like as well?
I do, because sometimes when you have players who have middle fingers or even third fingers towards the end next to the point, sometimes you can bump your fingers against a barrel which has a rounded nose, and if you taper it a little bit, you're not actually going to get that effect. You've only got a little bit of edge next to the point there, and of course, when you're trying to get the points closer together, you take away some of the barrel, and then it's obviously going to get closer together because there's no tungsten there.
So thumbs up from you?
Thumbs up from me.
Dennis Priestley Special Edition. Really special dart for me to talk about. Dennis was one of our first marquee signings, probably going back 12 years ago now, when he got into the Premier League at a very late stage. He has been a phenomenal brand ambassador for us, and I want to thank Dennis for that. He's one of the most professional people, hardest workers, and this is to celebrate and say thank you to Dennis for all he's done for us and for all the dart fans. And as a dart, I think you're going to talk about it, but as a person, what was your first memory of Dennis?
Well, it has to be 1991, doesn't it, when he won the Lakeside? But I remember asking my dad about why he used to always switch to the treble 18, because if anybody was switching around the board in the early part of dart's great years, they were always going to treble 19, but Dennis was different. He was confusing the spotters, he was confusing the cameramen. Why is he always going just to the right? But he made everybody think back in 91 when he blitzed everybody. And he played the game a little bit differently. He was the first exponent of the treble 18 switch. And after that, it became fashionable to use the treble 18 a lot more. He was just different and incredibly refreshing.
Yeah, and his going back to his darts, the shape of his darts has never changed. We've never made anything different shape-wise for Dennis.
Thing is, Dennis Priestley is a classy individual who knows that when it's not broken, you don't have to fix it. He's always had the scallop element at the middle part of the barrel and this bulbous bit at the front, but there's always been a tiny bit of a taper as well at the end. You would think with the way he throws and the dart that he throws that it's almost impossible to be a power hitter on that treble 20, but he buffed that trend.
Because his grip was for a big man, big hands. I mean, you can do his grip. How he held it at the front and so, like a paw, really.
Yeah, it was really odd. And there had been some strange styles in darts before Dennis Priestley, but this was different again. He would hold it in the middle of the index finger and the inside of the thumb, and then the middle finger would come into play, but it would basically glide along the point. And then the third finger came into play, and he would almost use it as something for the point to stop on. I'm not really sure how. He must have a big.
But it was like he only held the front tiny bit of the dart.
Yeah, and he didn't have a backlift on his throw. What he used to do was put it in front of his eyes, sometimes for quite a long time to get his aim, and then he would have this tiny little jab backwards on the backlift, and then just propel it forward. But it was more like a push as opposed to a throw.
But a technically very good throw in execution.
Yeah, the lines were brilliant because he was always very perpendicular to the floor. He would never go backwards or forwards or sideways with his stance. He was always rock solid. And I remember watching the first sidearm shot I ever saw of him. I thought, he just doesn't move. It's one of the reasons why he was great alongside the other guys who started up the PDC back then. And the fundamentals were great, but his individual style, and sometimes it is individual styles that makes people great.
Yeah, and moving on to this special edition, we've got the metallic red coating, which we've seen in Overdrive. We've kept the classic black and red, and the stunning's finished. It's fantastic.
It's comfortable to use. If you've got a thumb in your grip, which is in the middle, as well as your index finger, this one is going to sit inside your hand really comfortably.
I think you were a bit surprised, weren't you?
I was, because I've used the previous models from Dennis Priestley darts, and sometimes the scallop element was a little bit too far back or too far forward. But this one, it's a bit more central for me. And I was having a throw of these, and I just couldn't put them down. I was really enjoying throwing these. And, you know, testament to one of my heroes when I was growing up, it's just a privilege to be able to use these. And
when we saw you throw these darts, one thing that the kind of was shocking, well, not shocking, but we picked up immediately was the thud, and that there was almost a quick. Did you feel them quicker through the air? Yeah, well, you're throwing against this bulbous piece at the bottom. So I'm throwing not just with this ring grip here. I'm actually propelling it forward with this chunky piece. You sure you weren't throwing them faster? I really didn't think I was throwing them faster, but there was a definitive thump when they were hitting the board, which really direct, weren't they? When you look at the way that Dennis Priestley throws these darts and they go in so light, that actually accentuates. He would sit them up, wouldn't he? He accentuates how light he throws them, because I find it very hard for anybody to throw that dart without there being some sort of thump in the board. Yeah, and you were hitting a lot of trebles with them. Well, he designed them after all, so he must have done something right. He must have kissed them with a bit of good luck before I was throwing them. But no, they're a fabulous design. I think they're a true testament to one of the legends of the game. So we're looking at the Wizard special editions. This is to commemorate Simon's commitment to the sport over the decades he's played, and for a long time he's been with us. Simon had a lot of input into how he wanted a far more colour, a lot more pizzazz to the dart, but it's maintained exactly the same profile. So was it fair to say you weren't quite taken at the very outset? When I first started throwing these ones, I couldn't really find a position for my thumb and middle finger for it to be useful. But to be honest with you, I think every dart that you throw, it doesn't really fall into place immediately. You've got to find the little intricacies and the positions that you need with, especially something this complex. Simon, as we know, is a bit of a mad scientist. And when it comes down to constructing darts, he didn't just say, can you make me something simple? This is very intricate indeed. There are diagonal grooves, there are vertical grooves, there are horizontal grooves, there's a step in there, a scallop. It's almost like everything that has ever been done to a dart has been put into this one barrel. It almost looks like a custom-made bullet to me.
But to be honest with you, it's visually appealing. I think there's going to be a lot of people out there wondering how they can throw this thing. And when you put it with the Prism Force stem and this very, very catching grey and purple flight, it's a fabulous thing to look at.
Yeah, because Simon's always used a scallop sort of in the middle of his dart. When he first arrived, he had a smaller, much more bullet-shaped dart, but then he'd had a scallop put into the middle. So he's maintained that characteristic. But the change you're most surprised with is the tapered nose now.
Yeah, I think when Simon won the European Championship in 2012, he was using the older dart, and he always had that step position somewhere around the halfway point because he wanted a definitive point for his thumb to go on that point.
Because he has always done it the way he brings the dart into aim, hasn't he?
Correct. And I think there was a point where he started to struggle with his game, and he felt like his finishing was his biggest asset, for the want of a better phrase. Yeah. But he wanted to be able to score better, and he wanted the darts to get closer together. Now, his dart used to taper outwards, so it would actually get fatter going towards the point. Did, yeah. So what he did was a complete 180, and he said, I want it to taper inwards now so I can get them closer together. Well, no disrespect to any other player in the world, but nobody gets them closer together than Simon Whitlock now.
And his career has come back a huge amount, hasn't he? He's been one of the guys one of the only guys to really rebuild a career from falling down.
That takes an awful amount of self-belief in what you do. He's gone back to playing in the Portsmouth area and playing against local guys, trying to start confidence from step one. I've got to give him a lot of credit for that because it's worked. He's got himself back in the frame for European Tour events and back into major finals, like when he got to the Grand Prix final against Daryl Gurney. He hasn't picked up another one, but boy, he's been close. And
he has stuck with the same darts, effectively.
Yes, he is a bit of a tinkerer, but when he does tinker, it's the smallest things. It's the rings on the stems. It's the caps on the flights. It's
his crazy points.
Yeah, he loves a bit of a point construction, doesn't he? Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's the barrel phase of the dart that doesn't change. And when he does make little intricate changes, it usually is a little bit of colour and maybe one more groove here and there. But I think that's just to make things a bit more interesting.
So going to how you flighted the darts, how were they for you in flight?
Well, with a barrel like this, I needed to throw it from the back of the barrel, so it was almost north of the scallop bit, which is in a bit of purple here with the circular grooves. And my middle finger was towards the point end, where it's got this seamless finish with the black point and in towards the silver and purple. But I felt like I needed to throw them with a little bit more of an arc.
Yeah, because they were sitting up more for you, weren't they?
Yeah, a lot of the darts that I've thrown over the course of today, they've gone in at my normal angle of just a little bit upright and sometimes quite flat. But with these ones, they go in exactly the same angle as Simon Whitlock's does. So it says to me that he's engineered these things to go in exactly how he wants them to, and it seems like it happens for everybody.
So a great fan collector's piece.
Yeah, I think they're a great collector's piece, and especially if you like purple.
We all love Andy Fordham. He's everyone's favourite legend. He's brought so much to the sport. You can't help but embrace what the guy's about, but we all love him so much that we've brought another special edition out, but this is for Andy, and we've maintained the original profile, original shape and the ethos of his original dart, but we've brought in an ultra modern, and it's a double mill cut dart, and you enjoyed it.
I really did. It's been a bit of an education for me today, actually, throwing darts that aren't usually my bag. Now, if we were making a dart that was for Andy Fordham that wasn't his particular shape, then it wouldn't have any sort of authenticity. But the thing about this shape is it is quintessentially Andy Fordham's dart. Just brought into the 21st century, really, with some extra milling on the cut of the centre piece of the dart. It's still got some of the grooves at the top and the bottom, which are pretty much quintessentially Andy Fordham in his old dart. But for me, I can see Andy Fordham throwing that, and I can see him loving every single time that he does, because it's just a fabulous piece of tungsten.
He had a unique grip, didn't he, Andy? He's got a unique grip when he throws. It's more, like a bit like a for such a bare paw. We're discussing it, you know, how does he throw that with such a bare paw?
How many times have we talked about people being unconventional and being some of the best that we've ever had? Sometimes it's the unconventional that you have to have a little bit of that to be such a great. Well, he used to grip the stem almost to the flight with this part of the thumb and this part of the finger and just cup his hands around the dart like that. And you think, if he's gripping the stem, what's the relevance of the grip on the dart? Well, the thing is, when his middle finger and his third finger come around, he's actually gripping the barrel with the inside of his hand. So it is very important indeed. He's thrusting the dart forward with these two, of course, from the stem, but it's the stability he's getting from the small barrel and then thrusting it forward from there. But
so the length of the barrel is absolutely crucial to Andy, where
it is.
So maintaining that is a good aspect.
Big hand. Size of the stem was crucial as well because it was quite small. He wanted everything to disappear inside his hand, and he didn't want to see anything when he was throwing it from in front of his eye, and it was all feel. That was the thing with Andy. He was a feel player, and he was a really good one too.
So building on that feel, how do these feel when you throw them?
My first throw of these was 140, so I should have probably put them down after that, but I didn't. I just felt like they fit into my hand. For such a small dart, I don't have the biggest hands, but when I picked it up, it just fell into my hand really nice. There's a little incline into the middle and then a decline with the ends. There's a little bit of a taper there, but I just feel like the insides of my fingers were fitting really nice with this one, and my thumb was sitting lovely on this double milled centre with the blue.
But you spoke about how it almost felt like you were clipping a seatbelt in and you were locked and ready to go. Is that from the double mill cut, you think?
It has to be, because I've used other shape darts like this and didn't feel that security. And I think when you have that security in your fingers, when you start using this dart and it feels like it's not going to move until you thrust it forward, then what more could you ask for, really?
Yeah, and you scored very heavily with these, didn't you? Lots of 180s.
It's hard to score heavily with such a thick dart and such a small one, but this one delivers, and I think people should give it a shot.
So do I. That brings an end to the Winmau 2020 launch. Paul, thank you ever so much for your insight today. It's been brilliant. We do need to know what your favourite set was, though.
Going to have to go for the Majestics. These are a fabulous set of darts that were just so much fun to use. So I'm going to take a set home and have a little go with these, I think.
And good. And we have an exclusive launch competition running across all our social media platforms. So take a look and get involved.